Understand this before anything else. What you are about to experience is not a technique. It is not a trick of the mind, and it is not a formula you repeat like a magic spell, hoping something outside of you will notice and respond. What you are about to experience is a shift in identity, a quiet and total transformation that takes place in the space of 24 hours, where you stop being the one who hopes for a win and become the one who already has it. This is the difference between a beggar standing outside a locked door and the owner walking through a home he already possesses. One is filled with tension, uncertainty, longing. The other is filled with ease, familiarity, quiet knowing. Today, in the next 24 hours, you are going to move from the first state into the second. Not because the outer world changes first, never because the outer world changes first, but because you change first, inwardly, silently, completely, and the outer world, as it always must, rearranges itself to match what you have become within. Think about this for a moment. Hope is a beautiful word, but it is also a quiet confession. When you say, "I hope I win," you are unconsciously admitting a division between yourself and the thing you desire. Hope lives in the future. Hope lives in maybe. Hope stands at a distance from its object, wishing, waiting, wanting. And as long as you live in that distance, you are actually reinforcing the very absence you are trying to escape. This is the great misunderstanding that keeps so many people locked outside of the life they are capable of living. They think that wanting something harder, hoping for it more intensely, praying for it more desperately, will somehow summon it into being. But desire, when it is untouched by conviction, only confirms lack. The stronger the hope often, the stronger the underlying admission that you do not yet have what you are hoping for. The truth is, consciousness does not respond to hope. Consciousness responds to identity. It responds to the state you occupy, not the words you say, not the wishes you whisper, not the prayers you recite out of desperation. Your inner world, that invisible atmosphere of assumption, feeling, and self-concept, is the only reality that matters, because it is the pattern from which all outer experience is woven. If your inner world says, "I am someone who is waiting to win," then no matter how many times you buy a ticket, no matter how many times you say the right words, your outer world must remain a reflection of waiting. It has no choice. It is simply mirroring you. Let that sink into your spirit. The outer world is a mirror, and it has never once initiated anything. It has only ever reflected. So if you want a different outer experience, you do not go to the mirror and beg it to show you something different. You do not stand in front of the mirror and hope it changes its reflection out of mercy. You change yourself, and the mirror, being only a mirror, has no option but to change with you. This is the entire secret hidden within every scripture, every teaching of inner transformation, every whisper of ancient wisdom that has ever spoken about the kingdom being within you and not somewhere far off, not somewhere external, not somewhere you must travel to find, but a state of consciousness you carry with you and step into like a change of clothing. You must realize that when it is said the kingdom of God is within, this is not a poetic metaphor meant only for churches and quiet Sunday mornings. It is a precise description of how reality operates. Your consciousness is the kingdom, your imagination is the throne, and whatever state you assume as true within that kingdom, whatever identity you crown as king over your inner world, will inevitably express itself outwardly as your circumstances, your results, your very life. This is why a person can pray for decades and see nothing shift, while another person, without ever mentioning a prayer, simply assumes a new identity within, and their whole life transforms almost overnight. The first person begged the mirror to change, the second person changed, and the mirror obeyed, because it always obeys. Feel this deeply, because this is the very heart of what you are here to do in the next 24 hours. You are not going to ask the universe for a win. You are not going to send out a hopeful wish and wonder if it lands somewhere and is heard. You are going to become, within your own imagination, the version of yourself who already has the win. You are going to inhabit that identity so completely, so calmly, so naturally, that hoping becomes irrelevant, because a person who already has something does not hope for it. They simply live from it. They carry it in their posture, in their tone of voice, in the quiet ease with which they move through their day. That is the shift. Not more hoping, not more longing, a complete and total occupation of the identity of the one who has already received. Consider this. If you had already won, if the outcome had already happened, and you were simply living in its aftermath, how would you feel right now, in this very moment? Not later, not once the news arrives, right now. Would there be a lightness in your chest? Would your shoulders soften? Would a small, private smile rise up from somewhere deep inside you? The kind of smile you don't show anyone, the kind you simply feel because you know something wonderful has already unfolded in your favor. That feeling, That exact feeling is the raw material from which your new reality is built. It is not a fantasy you visit occasionally. It is the state you are going to move into and live from, beginning now, and carry with you through every hour of this next day. Understand this. Imagination is not an escape from reality. Imagination is the very substance from which reality is made. Every invention that has ever existed in the physical world first existed as an image in someone's mind. Every building was imagined before it was built. Every relationship was imagined before it was formed. Every transformation in a human life was imagined before it was lived. This is not mysticism. This is the mechanics of creation itself. Consciousness imagines, feels the imagined state as real, and the outer world, slower, denser, more resistant to change than the inner world, eventually catches up and rearranges itself to match what was first felt as true within. The lag between inner assumption and outer manifestation is not evidence that the law is false. It is simply evidence of the nature of the physical world, which must always, eventually, conform to the assumptions held within consciousness. You must realize that the reason so many people never experience this shift is because they treat imagination as a small, occasional visitor, something they invite in for 5 minutes and then dismiss, returning immediately afterward to their old identity, their old complaints, their old sense of lack. This is like planting a seed and then digging it up an hour later to check if it has grown, only to discard it in frustration and plant an entirely different seed the next day. Nothing has time to take root. Nothing has time to become real. The soil is constantly being disturbed. This is why the 24-hour shift you are about to move through is not a single 5-minute exercise. It is a sustained occupation of a new identity, carried like a quiet undertone beneath every single thing you do for the full day and night ahead. Let this settle within you. You do not need to feel excited in a loud, forced, artificial way. In fact, forced excitement often betrays the very lack it is trying to cover. What you need is something quieter and far more powerful, a calm, settled knowing, the kind of feeling you have about things that are simply, obviously true. You do not feel excited that the sun will rise tomorrow. You do not feel desperate hope that gravity will still function when you drop something. You simply know these things, without strain, without effort, without the exhausting emotional labor of convincing yourself. This is the feeling you are cultivating now, not the frantic energy of hoping for a miracle, but the peaceful, almost boring certainty of someone who already knows the outcome, because in their inner world, the outcome has already occurred. Notice what happens when you stop asking, "Will I win?" and instead quietly assume, "I have already won, and I am simply waiting for the world to catch up to what I already know." Notice the tension leave your body. Notice the compulsive checking, the anxious refreshing, the restless wondering begin to fade. This is not because you have become passive or indifferent. It is because you have moved your center of operation from the external world, which you cannot control, into the internal world, which you fully command. You are no longer trying to manipulate outer conditions through frantic effort. You are simply living, hour by hour, from the calm assumption of the wish fulfilled, and allowing the outer world, as it must, to conform. Imagine for a moment the scene of receiving the news. Not vaguely, not abstractly, specifically. See the moment clearly in your mind, as if it is a memory rather than a fantasy. Feel the particular sensation in your body. Perhaps it is a strange mixture of disbelief and quiet joy. Perhaps it is a laugh that escapes you before you can stop it. Perhaps it is the sensation of your legs feeling slightly weak, or your hands trembling as you hold whatever confirms the win. Feel the specific words that might run through your mind. Feel the people you might want to tell, and imagine their faces as you tell them. Do not rush through this. Let it be slow and vivid and complete. This is not idle daydreaming. This is the deliberate construction of a memory that has not yet occurred in the physical world, but is already occurring, fully and completely, in the only place that matters, your consciousness. The truth is, your imagination does not distinguish between what is physically manifested and what is vividly, emotionally experienced within. This is why a nightmare can cause your heart to race, even though nothing in physical reality has touched you. This is why remembering a painful memory can bring tears, even though the event is long over. Your nervous system, your subconscious mind, your entire emotional apparatus responds to the reality of the image held in imagination, not to whether that image is currently visible in the physical world. This means you have within you the ability to generate the exact feeling of having already won, right now, without waiting for any external confirmation. And once that feeling becomes your dominant, sustained inner atmosphere, the outer world has no choice but to slowly, inevitably, rearrange itself into agreement. You are not the person who checks numbers with a knot in their stomach. You are not the person who calculates odds and feels the weight of improbability pressing down on their chest. You are not the person who has trained themselves through years of disappointment to expect the anticlimax, to expect the letdown, to brace for nothing before anything even happens. That old identity, the one shaped by scarcity, by countless small disappointments, by a lifetime of being told to be realistic, to not get your hopes up, to expect very little so you are never hurt. That identity is not who you are. It was only ever a costume you wore because it was familiar, because it was safe, because at some point it felt easier to expect nothing than to risk the vulnerability of expecting everything. You are someone else entirely. You are the one who has already stepped through that locked door and found, to no great surprise, that the home was exactly as beautiful as they always somehow knew it would be. You are the one who does not need convincing, because you are not trying to talk yourself into a belief you do not hold. You are simply remembering from some deep, quiet, ancient place within you that this has already happened, that this is already yours, that the timeline in which you have received this gift already exists, and you are simply, patiently, calmly walking toward it, one ordinary hour at a time. Let's speak now about the mechanics of how this actually unfolds, because understanding this will remove any lingering confusion about why this shift matters more than any external action you could take. Every person carries what can be called a self-concept, an inner definition of who they believe themselves to be. This self-concept is not something you consciously chose in a single dramatic moment. It was built slowly, over years, through repeated experiences, repeated emotional reactions, repeated stories told to yourself and about yourself. If your self-concept says, "I am someone who never gets lucky," then every event in your life will be filtered, interpreted, and even subtly arranged by your subconscious mind to prove that story true. You will notice the losses more than the wins. You will remember the near misses more vividly than the moments life was generous with you. This is not because the universe is unfair. It is because your self-concept is acting like a lens, and a lens can only show you what it is shaped to show. This is why the shift you are making today is not about the lottery at all, not really. It is about your self-concept. It is about quietly, deliberately, and completely revising the story you have been telling yourself about who you are and what you are capable of receiving. When you assume, with full feeling, the identity of someone who has already received abundance, someone for whom good fortune is simply a natural, expected part of life, you are not lying to yourself, you are correcting an old lie that was mistakenly accepted as truth. You are returning to a more accurate, more expansive version of who you actually are, beneath all the years of conditioning that told you to expect less. Think about this for a moment. A person born into a family of extraordinary wealth does not walk around anxiously hoping that money will appear. They simply assume abundance as the natural backdrop of their life, and so their choices, their posture, their expectations all flow from that assumed identity. And remarkably, life tends to continue giving them what they already assume to be true. This is not because they are inherently more deserving. It is because their self-concept has never been interrupted by scarcity thinking, and so it continues, uninterrupted, to produce what it has always produced. You, right now, in the next 24 hours, are going to practice occupying that same undisturbed, unquestioning assumption, not about wealth in general, but specifically about this win, this moment, this shift from hoping to having. You must realize this shift happens in stages, and it is important to move through each one honestly, rather than skipping ahead and pretending. The first stage is awareness. You must become aware, without judgment, of exactly how you have been relating to this desire until now. Notice the hoping, notice the anxious energy, notice the pattern of wanting something while simultaneously, subtly, believing you probably will not get it. Do not criticize yourself for this. This awareness is not meant to shame you. It is meant to show you clearly what you are moving away from, so the shift ahead feels real and earned rather than superficial. The second stage is recognition, recognizing that this old pattern was never actually serving you, that hoping while doubting was never bringing you closer to anything, that the anxious checking and the disappointed sighing were simply reinforcing the very lack you wanted to escape. In this recognition, there is often a strange kind of relief, because you realize you are not obligated to continue an old habit simply because it is familiar. You are permitted, at any moment, to choose differently. The third stage is inner reflection, where you begin to ask yourself deeper questions. What would it feel like to no longer need this outcome so desperately? What would it feel like to hold this desire the way you hold your certainty that the sun will rise, calmly, without strain? What has to shift within you, not outside you, for that calm certainty to become your natural state? This stage often reveals old fears, the fear of hoping too much and being disappointed, the fear of being seen as foolish for believing something so improbable, the fear that if you fully expect good things, you are somehow tempting fate to take them away. Let these fears surface. Do not push them down. Simply notice them and understand that they were formed in a mind shaped by scarcity, and they do not have to continue shaping you. The fourth stage is spiritual awakening, and this is where something quietly shifts in the depth of your being. You begin to sense, perhaps faintly at first, that you are not merely a physical creature at the mercy of random chance, but a conscious being whose inner states genuinely, meaningfully shape the outer conditions of your life. This is not a belief you have to force. It is something you begin to feel, almost like remembering something you always knew, but had forgotten under the weight of years of conventional thinking. In this awakening, a quiet reverence often arises, a sense that you are participating in something sacred, something far older and wiser than the mechanics of a lottery drawing, something connected to the very principle by which all of creation unfolds from the invisible into the visible, from the imagined into the manifest. The fifth stage is identity shift, and this is the true center of everything you are doing in these 24 hours. This is where you stop merely visiting the feeling of having won and instead begin to live from it as your baseline state. You wake up, and instead of your first thought being about whether you have won, your first thought is a quiet, natural acknowledgement that you already have. Not loudly, not performatively, simply, calmly, as a fact you carry the way you carry your own name. This shift does not need external proof to feel real, because it is happening entirely within the domain where all reality actually originates, your consciousness. The sixth stage is empowerment, and this arises naturally out of the identity shift. When you are no longer waiting anxiously for permission from outer circumstances to feel good, you begin to feel a deep, settled sense of personal power. You realize that you are not at the mercy of random external events. You are instead the one shaping your inner world moment by moment, and the outer world, being only a reflection, must eventually agree with what you have shaped. This is not arrogance. This is simply an accurate understanding of your role in your own life, not as a passive recipient of fate, but as the conscious operator of your own inner atmosphere. The seventh stage is embodiment, where the new identity stops feeling like something you are practicing and starts feeling like something you simply are. You do not need to remind yourself to feel calm and certain. You simply are calm and certain, the way you are simply yourself when you walk into a room, without effort, without performance. This is the stage where the shift becomes stable, where it no longer requires conscious maintenance every few minutes, because it has settled into the deeper layers of your subconscious mind, which now automatically generates thoughts, feelings, and even small physical behaviors consistent with the identity of someone who has already received. And the eighth stage is expansion, where the shift you have made in this one specific area of your life begins to quietly influence other areas as well. Once you have proven to yourself through direct inner experience that you can move from hopeless waiting into calm, assured knowing, you begin to apply this same principle elsewhere, to your health, to your relationships, to your sense of purpose, to every corner of your life where old scarcity thinking once ruled unquestioned. This one shift becomes a doorway into a larger transformation of how you relate to your entire existence. Let's return now to the practical unfolding of this 24-hour period, because understanding the stages intellectually is only useful if it becomes something you actually live through, hour by hour, today. As you move through this day, whenever an old anxious thought arises, a worry about odds, a doubt about whether this is even real, a fear of disappointment, do not fight the thought or suppress it violently. Simply notice it and gently return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Return to the quiet, settled sensation of already having received. Each time you do this, you are not failing because a doubt arose. You are succeeding because you are practicing the very skill this entire shift depends on, the skill of returning again and again to the assumed state, until returning becomes as natural as breathing. Understand this. Repetition is not weakness. Repetition is how any new identity becomes stable. A child does not walk perfectly the first time they attempt it. They fall and they return to standing, over and over, until standing and walking become automatic, unconscious, effortless. You are doing the same thing now, except instead of training your legs, you are training your inner assumption. Every time a doubt arises and you gently, without frustration, return to the feeling of having already received, you are strengthening a new pathway, a new default setting, a new automatic response that will eventually require no conscious effort at all. As the hours pass today, notice how you speak to yourself, even in small, seemingly insignificant moments. When you order your coffee, when you greet someone, when you go about the ordinary tasks of your day, carry beneath all of it the quiet undertone of someone for whom good fortune is simply natural, simply expected, simply part of the fabric of their life. You do not need to announce this to anyone. This is not about convincing other people. It is about the atmosphere you are cultivating within your own consciousness. An atmosphere that does not require an audience to be real. Consider this. Biblical wisdom has always pointed toward this same principle, even when it was not explained in modern psychological language. When it is said that according to your faith it shall be done unto you, this is not a vague encouragement to simply believe harder. Faith, in its deepest sense, is not desperate belief in something uncertain. Faith is a state of inner knowing so complete that it no longer requires evidence. It is the substance of things hoped for. And yet notice, the moment hope becomes substance, it stops being mere hope and becomes assumed reality. This is the exact transition you are making now. You are moving hope, that thin, uncertain wishing, into faith, that solid, embodied knowing. And in doing so, you are aligning yourself with a principle that has been described in one form or another across the entire history of spiritual teaching. You must realize that when Scripture speaks of asking in prayer and believing that you have already received, it is describing precisely this mechanism, not asking and then waiting anxiously to see if the request was heard, but asking and in the same breath assuming the state of already having received so completely that the asking itself becomes almost unnecessary because the receiving has already internally occurred. This is why so many spiritual teachers throughout history have emphasized gratitude before the outer manifestation appears. Gratitude, when it is genuine, can only be felt by someone who believes they have already received something. To be grateful in advance is to assume the wish already fulfilled, and this is precisely the state you are cultivating throughout this 24-hour shift. Let this settle within you. You are not asking the universe for permission. You are not begging some distant external force to notice you and decide, out of arbitrary mercy, whether you deserve this outcome. You are aligning your own consciousness with the truth of what you desire, and allowing that inner alignment to naturally, inevitably express itself outwardly, because that is simply how consciousness and its expression have always worked, long before anyone gave it a name, long before any teacher described it in a lecture, long before any book attempted to explain it. This principle was operating quietly beneath every human life throughout all of history, whether people understood it or not, the same way gravity operated long before anyone understood the mathematics behind it. Feel this deeply now. As you move through the remaining hours of today and into tomorrow and through the full arc of this 24-hour shift, allow yourself moments of stillness where you deliberately, calmly, without strain, enter into the scene of having already received. Not as a fantasy you visit and then abandon, but as a truth you are simply remembering. See it, feel it. Let your body relax into it the way your body relaxes into a truth you have never once doubted. And then, having felt it fully, release it, and go about your day with the quiet, settled confidence of someone who has nothing left to prove, nothing left to convince themselves of, because the matter, in the deepest part of their being, has already been settled. Notice, as you do this, that your relationship to waiting itself begins to transform. Waiting, for the person still trapped in hope, is agony, a slow, anxious countdown filled with dread and longing. But waiting, for the person who has made this shift, becomes something entirely different. It becomes simply the natural delay between an inner truth and its outer confirmation. No more distressing than waiting for a letter you already know is in the mail. No more anxious than waiting for a sunrise you have never once doubted will come. This is the peace available to you the moment you stop hoping and start having within the very thing you desire. You are not the person who needs the outer world to prove something to you before you allow yourself to feel good. You are the one who feels good first, who feels certain first, who feels grateful first, and allows the outer world the honor of simply catching up to what has already been decided within. This is not arrogance. This is not delusion. This is the deepest, most practical spiritual law available to any human consciousness, that the inner always precedes and produces the outer, that assumption always precedes and produces experience, that identity always precedes and produces circumstance. As this day continues to unfold around you, let every ordinary moment become a quiet opportunity to practice this new identity. When you feel a flicker of old doubt, gently smile at it, the way you might smile at an old habit you have simply outgrown, and return again to the feeling of already having received. When you feel a rush of unnecessary urgency, breathe, and remember that urgency belongs to hoping, not to having, and gently release it, returning again to that settled, quiet knowing. Each return is not a failure to maintain the state perfectly. Each return is the very practice by which the state becomes permanent. Understand this. By the time these 24 hours are complete, you will not be the same person who began this journey. Something subtle but undeniable will have shifted within you. You will have practiced, deliberately and consistently, the art of assuming a new identity, the identity of someone who has already received, and in doing so, you will have planted, deep within your subconscious mind, a new pattern that does not require your constant conscious attention to continue operating. It will simply become part of who you now are, quietly influencing your posture, your tone, your expectations, your relationship to uncertainty itself. And whatever the outer world eventually reveals, whatever form the confirmation takes, and whenever it chooses to arrive, know this: you will have already lived, within your own consciousness, the exact feeling you were seeking. You will have already tasted the relief, the joy, the quiet, astonished gratitude, not as a fantasy, but as a genuine inner experience, fully felt, fully embodied, fully real, within the only place where anything has ever truly been real to begin with, your own awareness. And from that place, from that inner truth so completely inhabited, the outer world, as it has always done throughout the entire unfolding of creation, simply, quietly, inevitably moves to agree.